Please face the flag of our nation and recognize the principles for which it stands. Department 1 is now in session. The Honorable Mark E. Wyndham, Judge, presiding.
Please be seated, everyone. Good morning. Go back to Department 1, People versus Robert Durst. Mr. Durst is present with Mr. DeGuerin and Mr. Chesnoff, Mr. Henderson at council table, and Mr. Lewis is present, Mr. Lewin is present. I think Mr. Balian is nearby as well. Mr. Henderson, are we ready to continue with the video recorded testimony of Emily Altman?
Yes, Your Honor, and we will finish in about 25 minutes.
Very good.
So
Thank
I'll
you.
replay where we left off. It's 39 minutes and 58 seconds into the last day of Emily Altman's testimony.
Okay, thank you.
If I were to ask you a question, if I were to say, for instance, have you ever robbed a bank? I would assume your answer would be no, correct? Yes. And the reason it would be a straight no is because you know, of course I've never robbed a bank, correct? Correct. Ma'am, when I ask you if Mr. Durst ever told you, this man, whether he was with his wife, Kathy Durst, when she died, should your answer be a definitive no?
And the thing said no. Okay? I said no to you.
Ma'am, so explain to me why in the context of it. Use the words, even in conjunction with other words.
One moment, Your Honor, we're having technical difficulties. And it's back.
I don't think so. Ma'am, would you agree that the fact that you said I don't...
The request of Mr. Lewin, I'm going to go back about 10 seconds.
Is that okay with Your Honor?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
40 minutes, 46 seconds.
Use the words, even in conjunction with other words. I don't think so.
I can't answer you.
Ma'am, would you agree that the fact that you said I don't think so, that I don't think so is not the same as no? Now, listen to my question. When you answered I don't think so, do you agree that that answer you gave was different than simply saying no?
I shouldn't have said that.
Okay, we're going to try the third time.
And I can require you to answer the question if I don't think so. It's different from no. That's all it is. And you know, and everyone else can argue about what it means and that it's not the whole thing that you said. Don't worry about the impact of what you're saying. Just answer this question. So please ask it again.
Now, when I asked you the question and you responded to whether or not Mr. Durst has ever told you that he was with Kathy Durst when she died, at one point your response was, I don't think so. And I'm asking you, do you agree that I don't think so is not the same as no, correct or incorrect?
Correct.
Ma'am, did you ever tell Charlie Bagley that Bob Durst ever said to you that he was with his wife at the time that she died?
No.
Did you ever tell Mr. Bagley that Bob Durst said to you that his wife died in an accident?
No.
Did you ever tell Andrew Jarecki that Bob Durst told you that his wife died in an accident?
No.
Ma'am, the jail calls that were recorded in Pennsylvania and New Orleans, you have testified that you were aware that both sets of calls were being recorded, correct?
New Orleans and...
Yes, Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And you could hear that on the phone every time you had a conversation, correct?
Yes.
Have you ever told Bob Durst while he was incarcerated in New Orleans that if he ever wanted company, you would come down and visit him in jail any day you wanted? So we ask the question again, man. Have you ever told Robert Durst that one second. You ever told Robert Durst that as long as he gave you 24-hour notice, that you could fly down and see him any day you wanted?
Yes.
Have you ever told him that if you felt lonely, you would come visit him?
I don't remember exactly this.
Would that idea be consistent with the relationship you have with him? Ma'am? Answer the question. You said you don't know if you specifically told him that, listen, if he ever wanted a visit from a friend, that he would fly down and see him. You said you don't remember specifically saying that to him, correct? But I'm asking you whether you remember specifically saying that, would that accurately describe the relationship you had with Mr. Durst while he was in custody?
Yes.
Ma'am, you talked about, did you ever tell Bob Durst, you ever make him promise you that, let me ask if you ever use the following language. I'm talking about a March 27, 2016 jail call at 9:16 p.m. Tell me if you remember this, ma'am. This is you. You made me a promise once, and I want you to keep it, that you're going to call me once a week so that you know you're okay. Mr. Durst responds, I'll do it. You respond, okay. I don't ask for much, Bobby, but I'm asking for that, okay? He responds, yes. You respond, okay. I don't want to have to call Patton to ask how you are. That's embarrassing. Do you recall having a conversation like that with him?
I didn't have the name that you used, I'm sorry.
Well, Patton. Forget about Patton. Do you recall telling Bob Durst, in essence, making him promise he will call you once a week?
Because he was hospitalized, and I was aware that he was hospitalized, so yes.
And ma'am, when you said I don't ask for much, Bobby, but I'm asking for that, was that being said as his lawyer's legal secretary, was that being said as his close friend?
I'm not sure I can distinguish.
How many other clients of your husband's, ma'am, do you tell, please make sure you call me once a week so I know you're okay? Have you ever said that to another client? Ma'am, have you told Robert Durst that after he gets out of jail that you and Stewart intend to move to wherever you live? 11/17/15 at 10:26 p.m. New Orleans jail. Code EA012.
Very dramatic, but that seems to answer the question. Yes.
11/17/15 at 8:26 p.m. NOLA jail call. NOLA for New Orleans, I'm sorry. Code EA012. I'm trying to save time, man, so I'm gonna read this to you and you tell me if this is correct. You say, okay, listen, you have to promise me something, okay? You need to stay healthy so that when you get out, we can convince Stewart to move to a warm climate where you're gonna move rather than where he wants to move. Okay? And he responds, yeah.
My husband wanted to move to Florida when he retired, and I wanted to move any place but.
So, ma'am, the part where you say, where you want to get him to help you convince Stewart to move to a warm climate where you're going to move, meaning Bob Durst, you agree to say that's correct?
Yes.
Did you also, ma'am, you specifically told Bob that you wanted his help in convincing Stewart to move to Houston if that's where he's going to be living when he gets out?
Any place but Florida.
Ma'am, you denied any knowledge that you were aware that you were a beneficiary in Robert Durst's will. Did you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Is it your testimony, ma'am, that prior to me mentioning the will last Wednesday, that you expected to get nothing from Robert Durst upon his death?
That's correct.
Ma'am, do you know what happens in Bob's will if both Bob and his wife, Debbie, if Bob is dead and Debbie's not around, you inherit? Do you know what happens, ma'am?
No.
You and Stewart inherit his estate.
I have never heard that before, ever.
Ma'am, that's a lot of money from your understanding, correct?
That's not the issue. I never heard it.
Ma'am, okay, but I'm asking you, do you agree that's a lot of money?
Yes, but
Do you know what happens if you and Stewart and Debbie are all gone by that time? Yes, LAD, I'm going to read to you Article.
Gentlemen,
Okay.
just proceed.
Let me just, LADA 155487. Ma'am, you testified on cross-examination that you had sent this letter to NCIC. You said you typed it up, Inmate Services dated September 14, 2015. Do you recall that? Court's one for the record.
Thank you.
Do you recall that, ma'am?
Referencing the previous. I've got words one.
yes.
Is that an exact copy in every way of the letter that you sent?
Well, when I sent it to my letterhead on it.
But other than that, it's the exact same. Okay. And ma'am, you testified that you sent it certified, correct?
Yes.
And I would assume that for something as important as this, you would have certainly someone that signed for it, correct?
Sometimes I just sign for by the facility, and sometimes by a person, so I don't remember.
Now, I assume you have the proof that that the package was that the letter was received, correct?
Oh, so,
Well, ma'am, isn't that something that you could have previously provided? You turned in this letter and you said this demonstrates that even the president calls not. I'm asking, why didn't you submit at that time the certification as well?
I don't know.
Ma'am, you also said that after that, you quote, I assume they were not being recorded after that. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
Ma'am, why would you assume that you're not being recorded when you're listening on a line after these calls that says these calls are being monitored and recorded?
Because my husband is one of those attorneys, and I just walked it.
But ma'am, if you're talking about a legal secretary, you heard, even after you allegedly sent this letter, you still heard every time on the phone call this was being recorded, correct?
Yes.
Did you contact the facility to find out why it was that they were still recording your calls?
No.
Did you in any way follow up with NCIC?
I don't think so.
Ma'am, other than you saying right now that you sent this letter, is there any other proof that you have that it was sent?
Other than the postal service, no.
Ma'am, yesterday you discussed, on Thursday you discussed an email that I allegedly sent you, that I did send you, and you told me that, the court, that in essence that I had told you that I was going to have the press there if you didn't cooperate. Do you remember saying that?
I said that I was paraphrasing, and I think my attorney has the letter.
May I approach? Make sure we're talking about the same letter here.
You can project it.
I think that
Yes.
wanted to do this thing down.
I guess you can.
Okay, now,
Approach.
I'm going to read this out loud, and I want you to tell me if this is correct. Mike, Mark, 33. It's addressed to your son, Howard Altman, who is functioning as your lawyer. Is that correct? And it says, ma'am, Mr. Altman, as you are aware from our prior discussion, my office is currently prosecuting a murder case in Los Angeles against Robert Durst. This is a follow-up to my March 30, 2015 email request to interview your clients, Emily and Stuart Altman, regarding any knowledge they may have about the disappearance of Kathy Durst and the homicides of Susan Berman and Morris Black. My office is aware of your prior search and assertion that Stewart has a, quote, attorney-client relationship with Mr. Durst, and that Emily Altman is unwilling to speak with us. As our already during our phone conversation near the time of our original request, Stuart Altman's assertion of attorney-client privilege would not cover the time period before he became a licensed attorney, and there are questions pertaining to those years which are important to our investigation and prosecution. With respect to Emily Altman, she is a long-standing friend of Mr. Durst who has engaged in numerous conversations which she has discussed on television shows like Dateline and 48 Hours. Although Emily Altman is under no legal obligation to speak with us, I would expect that she would be willing to do her civic duty and reveal any information she might have pertaining to these tragic deaths. As of this date, I have received nothing in writing stating that Stuart Altman is asserting attorney-client privilege and that Emily Altman is exercising her right to submit to an interview. If that is your client's intent, please respond as such in writing, but be advised that we do not believe that Stuart Altman had an attorney-client relationship with Mr. Durst prior to Mr. Durst's arrest in November 2001. For that reason, we intend to call Stuart Altman as well as Emily Altman to testify in court as witnesses. Should your clients elect not to voluntarily submit to interviews prior to court proceedings, please advise as to whether your clients will authorize you as their attorney to accept service of process on their behalf pursuant to the Uniform Act to secure the attendance of out-of-state witnesses, California Penal Code Section 1334 et seq. I make this offer so that your clients can avoid the substantial inconvenience of appearing in a New York court more than once, which will almost certainly be accompanied by a media presence that I assume they would prefer not to avoid. Finally, let me be clear that your acceptance of service is by no means any waiver, any objections you may have to subpoena or any other legal arguments you might choose to raise on behalf of your clients. Thank you for your comprehension in this matter. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at the numbers listed below. John Luke. Is that the email that you referred to yesterday?
No, yeah, it is.
So, ma'am, when you said that in essence I threatened to bring the press, ma'am, have you seen me quoted in the papers during this case?
No, but I still maintain that when you said there would be a press presence, and I knew that no one in New York really cared about it. And the case wasn't, you asked me a question, please let me respond.
Yes, please, answer.
Please?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir. When no one in New York particularly cared about whether or not we were coming to California, and I know that the case was not on the calendar, that it wasn't, there was no docket number, there were no numbers. The only way the press could have possibly found out about it, in my own mind, is that someone other than my attorneys or the courts in New York alerted them to this particular time when the Associated Press was in my face. And the only thing that I can think of, the only thing that I personally in my own head could think of was that someone out here, maybe you, notified the press, or maybe someone in your office, or maybe someone you knew. But that's honestly what I thought, and I still think, and it's my opinion and I'm entitled to it.
Perhaps, ma'am, maybe Mr. Bagley from the I Don't Care About This Case New York Times, who's out here from New York City, you've spoken numerous times, ma'am. Perhaps he might have been one of the reporters in court. Is that correct?
Not the second time, no, because I said to him, I called him, I said, you have my honest answers, I'm getting them to you. He asked me, I said, are you coming to the second hearing? And he said, no, it's ridiculous, nothing's going to happen.
So,
Thank you, ma'am.
got it?
I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. DeGuerin?
Let me read this to you. It's in evidence, I suppose.
It's been read already, but you'll read that paragraph about the media?
Not the paragraph, it's just a line.
Yes.
It says, I make this offer so that your client can avoid the substantial inconvenience of appearing in the New York court more than once, which will almost certainly be accompanied by a media presence that I assume they would refer to avoid. My question is that what you took as a threat?
Yes, sir.
Is it your final statement that you cannot identify the source of what Mr. Lewin asked you to testify about next week? You cannot identify the source. Okay. And you cannot say that it came from Bob Durst to your ears, right? In fact, other than your visits in Pennsylvania and your visits in New Orleans, where you were signed in, have you ever, during that period of time from 2001 to the present, visited with Bob Durst without Stuart Altman present?
No.
Okay. So, for Mr. Lewin's benefit, in case I was too vague, what I mean by that is, have you ever been in that period of time, 2001 to the present, with Bob Durst without Stuart Altman being present? And so, as to the time of the conversation that you no longer can say came from Bob Durst, can you say with any certainty now when such a conversation occurred? 2001, 2004, 2007 were 3 days that you threw out last week.
I can't say with any certainty.
Did you ever read what's been referred to as the BD document?
No.
Did you know that it was in the box that you had accumulated of things that Bob had given you and the news articles and other things that you had thrown in the box?
No.
You first gave that box to Andrew Jarecki.
Yes.
Did he return it?
Yes.
Did you inventory what was in the box at the time you returned it?
No.
And you also turned that over, who did you turn it over to after that? They, did they return it?
Yes.
Did you inventory it at that time? Do you now know, and I'm not asking you whether if you found this out through any kind of confidential communication, I'm not asking you that, but other than any kind of confidential communication, that is through your husband, or through speaking in a confidential manner, do you now know what the BD document is?
It was in a subpoena, where Mr. Lewin subpoenaed me. It was attached to the subpoena.
Okay. Did you, this is a yes or no, did you tell Andrew Jarecki anything about Kathy Durst's disappearance?
No.
Did you tell Andrew Jarecki anything about Morris Black case?
No.
Did you tell Andrew Jarecki anything about Susan Berman?
No.
There have been several versions of what give to Jarecki the box, or did he tell you to speak to Jarecki, or what did he tell you?
You just say, cooperate with Jarecki and give him what you have.
And what you have was the box.
A box.
Okay. And you did not, even though he may have said to you, speak to Mr. Jarecki, you did not speak to him. You did not adjust. By interview, I mean for the chiefs. You know what I mean?
We spoke to Mr. Jarecki once to his office, but we didn't interview with him in the case.
Okay. In the spirit of full disclosure, you and I have known each other for a number of years, correct? And even though you're represented by counsel, you and I have not spoken about the substance of this case since you've gotten counsel. Is that correct?
That's good.
Okay. I say hello to you every morning, and I give you a hug, right? But we don't talk about the facts.
Sounds about your dog.
That's all?
And may I excuse this witness? Is there any objection?
No, it's none from here.
You are excused.
Anderson, were there exhibits?
There were, Your Honor. There were 14 exhibits used in the testimony of Emily Altman. I'm marking as People's 138B, an exhibit sheet, which correlates what we saw in the video with the new exhibits we have for trial. That sheet says the following exhibits are being marked for identification. The new People's 138C was Courts 1 in the video. It was a one-page letter. The new People's 138B is a two-page document, which was Courts 2. The new People's 138E is a photograph, which was People's 21. The new People's one.
I'm sorry.
138C, 138C, and then where's the last one, 138E?
I'm documenting all this on the sheet for you, but I'll read it again.
Okay.
People's 138C is a one-page letter that was Courts 1 in the video. People's 138D is a two-page document, which was Courts 2. People's 138E is a one-page photograph, which was People's 21. People's 138F through J are all going to be two-page transcripts. So People's 138F is a two-page transcript, which was 22A. People's 138G is a two-page transcript, which was People's 23A. People's 138H is a two-page cadaver letter and envelope photocopy, which was People's 24. People's 138I is a two-page transcript, which was People's 26A. People's 138J is a two-page transcript, which was People's 27A. People's 138K is a five-page article, which was People's 28. People's 138L is a 33-page document referred to as the BD story. That was People's 29. People's 138M is a two-page transcript, which was People's 30A. People's 138N is a two-page transcript, which was People's 31A. People's 138O is a two-page transcript, which was People's 32A. And finally, People's 138P is a one-page email, which was People's 33.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, I believe the next witness for the People is retired Detective Paul Coulter.
I'm sorry, you waiting on me?
So is, I got the impression that Detective Coulter was here.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
They collect the transcripts. Did you collect the transcripts already, or what?
Anyone has a transcript?
The commotion is dies down. All right?
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated. If you could please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
It's Paul, P-A-U-L, Coulter, C-O-U-L-T-E-R.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Bailey, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Morning.
What is your current occupation,
Don't have one, I'm retired.
and for how long have you been retired?
July 31st, it'll be 9 years.
And what did you retire from?
I was a detective with the Los Angeles Police Department, assigned to Robbery Homicide Division.
All right, and it's difficult with the mask. To the best of your ability, if you can move the mic closer to you or kind of speak up into it. Thank you. You said you were a detective that you retired from with the Robbery Homicide Division of the Los Angeles Police Department.
Yes,
For how many years were you assigned to the Robbery Homicide Division?
December 98 to my retirement in July of 2012.
And the Robbery Homicide Division, what are the primary types of cases that go to the Robbery Homicide Division?
Well, I worked the homicide special section, which would handle high-profile cases, serial murder investigations. For a while, we would handle officer-involved shootings, and anything else that the chief decided to pass down our way.
For how many years in total were you a sworn peace officer?
A little over 35 years.
And for how many of those years were you working with the Los Angeles Police Department?
A little over 35 years.
Okay. I'm going to take you back to January 11th of 2001. Prior to coming to court today, I know that was a long time ago, did you review notes you had made from that time period, reports you had written from that time period?
Some of them, yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Well, it's these masks.
So On January 11th of the year 2001, were you assigned to take over a case from the West Los Angeles Division?
Yes.
Okay. And what detective were you assigned to take that case from?
My partner was Detective Jerry Stevens, Stepheens.
That was your partner.
Yes, that was my partner.
I guess my question was, who were you assuming the case from?
Oh, West LA was Detective Brad Roberts, and I believe his name was Jim Hayes.
Okay. And was this case involving the death of Susan Berman that occurred at 1527 Benedict Canyon Road in the city and county of Los Angeles?
Yes.
Why did Robbery Homicide Division get involved in the case?
Well, it came down from the chief's office, I think because it was gaining some publicity, that it was a high-profile case. She was a writer. Her father had been involved with the Flamingo Hotel in Vegas, and it was getting some publicity.
Okay. And on that date, January 11th, 2001, did you go to 1527 Benedict Canyon?
Yes.
What was your purpose of going there that day?
Location to do a walkthrough. The original crime scene had been done by West LA detectives. So as we were going to assume the investigation, we went out to do a walkthrough. We call it a walkthrough of the crime scene. In other words, they take us through the residence, what was done, what was collected, where the body was located originally, maybe some of the items that had been recovered during their initial crime scene investigation, and just basically for us to get a lay of the land before we get into it.
This is January 11th
Yes,
of 2001, correct?
2001, yeah.
Okay. So did you meet Detective Roberts there and Detective Hayes?
Yes.
All right. When this case was initially assigned to you, was Robert Durst a suspect prior to this case being assigned to you?
This case assigned, I'd never heard of Robert Durst.
Okay. Prior to this case being assigned to you, had you ever heard of Susan Berman before?
No.
Prior to this case being assigned to you, were you ever asked to interview Susan Berman?
No.
As far as you are aware, from your review of the file, prior to Susan Berman's murder, had any law enforcement officials from the East Coast reached out to Los Angeles Police Department to interview Susan Berman?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. So, did you stick with the original processing of the crime scene that was done by Detective Roberts and Hayes, or did you request some additional work be done?
Well, when we got there, we decided to process the residence again under our direction, some things that we wanted done, especially in that room where she was found.
Okay. Did you have the latent fingerprint section of the Scientific Investigations Division come out to the scene?
Yes.
And did you request that they reprocess areas of the home for fingerprints?
Yes, we did.
Did you ask them to chemically treat the walls with 9-hydrin?
Yes, in the bedroom where the body was found.
Can you describe for the jury what that process involves?
Ninhydrin is a chemical process they sprayed on the walls, and they let it set for a while. Actually, we had to go back a day or two later to see if it developed any fingerprints off of walls and things. Something that's not readily available through normal fingerprint processings with powders and dust and things like that. So we had them do that.
Okay. In this particular case, did you ever develop any fingerprints in that house that were connected to Robert Durst?
No.
I'm going to take you forward a couple of days to January 13th of 2001. And if at any point you need to ask me to look at your chronological history to refresh your memory, just let me know, okay?
You don't.
So on January 13th, 2001, did you do some initial background research on Susan Berman?
Yes.
Okay. And did you do some initial background research on Robert Durst?
Yes,
Okay. Had you received the name Robert Durst after Susan Berman was murdered from New York authorities?
when we initially went to the residence to do the walkthrough with West LA detectives, there were two New York, Joe Becerra, I think it was New York State Police, and an investigator, I think it was from Westchester County DA's office, Mr. O'Donnell, I don't remember his first name.
Okay. And so, did they tell you about Mr. Durst and his missing wife in New York?
Yes,
Okay. So you did some background research on Robert Durst?
yes.
Okay. As of that time, mid-January now, were you focusing on Robert Durst as a major suspect in this particular case?
No,
Okay. I'm going to take you to January 17th, 2001. Recall what you did on that date. And if you need to look at your chrono before you tell me to refresh your memory, please let me know. Do you need to do that?
well, I don't know what you're gonna ask me first.
Well, I'd like to know on or about January 17th if you did any additional work in terms of requesting any forensic analysis.
Yes.
Okay. What did you do on January 17th?
When the body is picked up from the crime scene, they are taken as they are, fully clothed. Once they get to the coroner's office, it's the coroner's responsibility to remove any clothing, to package it, and to store it at the coroner's office until it is collected to be booked as evidence on the case. So we had contacted our SID people to pick up her clothing from the coroner's office, and then further testing was done for hairs, fibers, semen. She was wearing her pair of like sleeping pants.
Let me stop you there and ask you a question.
Okay.
So the coroner took the body with Susan's clothing, correct?
Right.
Okay. There was a towel near her body on the floor, and there's been some questions raised about whether that was collected or not. Was that towel collected?
Yes, that was one of the items that was collected by the coroner's office.
Okay, so that towel was in fact collected?
Yes, by the coroner's investigator, yes.
So when you requested that SID, and again, when you say SID, is that the Scientific Investigative Division?
Yes, yes.
Okay, they do forensic testing for Los Angeles Police Department?
They were all the scientists that do all that stuff, whether it's DNA or trace analysis.
Okay. By the way, you requested the envelope with the letter be tested for DNA, correct?
Yes.
I don't know if you requested it or it had already been requested by Roberts.
I don't remember, as I sit here today, if it was me or Roberts. I know that the request had been made, and I did do follow-ups with SID to see if anything had been recovered as far as DNA,
Okay.
and there was not.
They didn't get any DNA off those items.
No.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So going back to your request on January 17th for SID to check for hairs and fiber and semen from the victim's clothes, did you also have them check that towel that was recovered by the coroner?
Yes.
All right. So were they able to, let's start with semen. Was there any semen located on any of those items?
No.
What about hairs and fibers? Did they recover any hairs and fibers from those items that could be tested?
No fibers, but there were some hairs that were consistent with Susan Berman.
Okay, so were there hairs recovered from Susan Berman's clothes?
Yes.
Were there hairs recovered from the towel?
Yes.
And are you saying the results of the testing was that those hairs were consistent with being Susan Berman's hair?
Yes, they were.
And I presume they tested those against samples of her hair taken upon autopsy?
Again, when the body is taken to the coroner's office, there are certain items of evidence they collect from the body, which are hair samples, fingernail clippings.
Okay.
Or fingernail clippings.
Did you request fingerprinting be done on the shell case, the 9mm shell case that was recovered near her body.
I don't remember if it was me or Detective Robert.
But it
I
was,
don't recall, as I said.
someone requested it. Were you able to get any fingerprints off that?
No.
I'm going to take you forward to January 18th, 2001. On that particular day, so this is now the next day, did you serve a search warrant on Susan Berman's telephone line from her home?
You mean for her phone records?
Yes.
Yes.
And did you request in that search warrant Susan Berman's phone calls for the months of November and December of the year 2000?
Yes.
Did you receive those phone records on January 21st, 2001?
On January 21st?
Yes.
I don't know the exact date, but I did get the results of the search warrant.
Okay.
It's not showing in my chrono on the 21st.
Okay. Did you collect those and book them into evidence as item 47 under DR number 00-08-25485?
Right, that's the case number, yes.
Okay. So they became item 47?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have a 34-page document. May I, phone records, may I mark these as next in order? What number? Yeah.
139.
I'm showing you what's been marked as 139. Are these the phone records you received from Pacific Bell in response to the search warrant you served for Susan Berman's phone records?
Yes. It was addressed to my partner, Detective Stevens.
Okay. Now, I'm going to take you, did you look through these records at some point in the past when you received them?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take you to November 7th of the year 2000.
Okay.
At 10:25 in the morning.
Yes.
Did these records demonstrate to you that Susan Berman's phone was used to call a number in New York, 212-925-3200?
What number are you saying? Oh, right. I got it. Moves up.
No, that's November 7th.
Yes.
Okay. So, was that number called on that particular date?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And did you know who, from your investigation, were you aware of whose number that was?
I think that was an office number for Mr. Durst, one of his locations in New York City.
Okay. And I'm going to take you now to November 13th. The last three calls on this particular page I'm showing you. Was Susan Berman's phone line again used to call Mr. Durst's number on November 13th at 11:26 in the morning?
Yes.
And again on that date at 1:04 p.m.
Yes.
And again on that date at 1:10 p.m.
Yes.
On January 22nd of the year 2001, did you meet with Sarah Kaufman?
Help me out. Do you have a time or something that we have met with Sarah Kaufman?
Okay. Did you ever receive any Wells Fargo records from Sarah Kaufman?
Yes.
I have a 2-page document, Your Honor. It's a Wells Fargo statement. It appears to be original. May I mark this as People's 140?
Yes.
We're going to staple these pages together. I'm showing you what's been marked as People's 40. Do you recognize the writing on the top of that?
Yes, that's my writing. I usually write stuff on the originals of red so that when you make a Xerox copy, you could tell if it's the original or a copy. So
Okay.
that is my writing, yes.
And so does that, looking at that writing, refresh your memory as to meeting with Sarah Kaufman on the 22nd?
Yes.
Okay, and did you receive this?
Actually, I
Thanks.
did find it in my chrono. It was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on that date.
Okay, so on that date, I guess at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, did you receive this bank statement from Sarah Kaufman?
Yes,
Okay, and this was a Wells Fargo statement belonging to Susan Berman?
that's correct, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I have a stipulation may I offer?
Yes.
May I have one moment, Your Honor? I apologize, Your Honor. I had to find an old exhibit. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 132 in this envelope, the Wells Fargo statement in 132, are documents that the Los Angeles Police Department detectives recovered from 1527 Benedict Canyon Boulevard, Beverly Hills, California on January 11th, 2001. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 140 are documents that LAPD detectives received from Sarah Kaufman on January 22nd, 2001. The Wells Fargo November statement and Wells Fargo December statements, both of these exhibits, are authentic Wells Fargo business records. So stipulated?
Stipulated.
So we accept the stipulation.
And may I mark this as 141, the stipulation?
That Benedict Canyon address, that's a Beverly Hills post office, but
Yeah.
it's actually City of Los Angeles.
Yes.
All right.
On January 24th, 2001, did you do something with respect to the 9mm shell case that was recovered near Susan Berman's body?
Yes.
What is that?
I requested our firearms unit to check the casing through DrugFire. DrugFire is a program that is used almost like a fingerprint system, except for casings. You can check for where the firing pin strikes the base of the casing to see if it's been a match to any other casings used in any other crime or recovered during any other crime investigations. So it was run through DrugFire. And
Let me stop that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
When a firearm is discharged, the firing pin from the gun strikes the casing to ignite the bullet. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And when the firing pin from the gun strikes the shell case, it leaves an impression on the shell case. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And are you saying that that impression it leaves is like a fingerprint unique to each particular firearm?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And digitally, there's a way when a bullet or a weapon is recovered from a crime scene, it's uploaded to a database.
That's correct, yes.
And you're saying DrugFire is a system where you can enter shell cases into the system, and the computer will determine if there's a match to any shell cases or guns from any other crime scenes that have been uploaded to the system.
That's correct. Back at that time, DrugFire was what was known. It has since been changed to NIBIN, which is a national database.
Okay. And were there any hits from that?
No,
No matches?
no matches, no.
I'm going to take you to March 27th of the year 2001. On that date, did you interview Paul Kaufman?
Yes, at the Beverly Hills Police Station.
Okay. And by the way, did you have any difficulty getting Mr. Kaufman in for an interview?
Yeah, it was a little difficult trying to get him to meet with us. He finally agreed to meet at Beverly Hills.
Describe what you mean by that.
Well, it just, some people are pretty cooperative and want to meet you right away. Others, it's like they try to avoid you. But we were just persistent with him until he finally decided to meet with us.
And did you conduct an interview with him on March 27th, 2001?
Yes,
And at some time shortly after this interview with him, did you write a police report documenting what he had told you?
yes,
And did you do your best to be as accurate as you could in this documentation, in this police report?
yes. During the interview, I took handwritten notes and then transposed them into a statement.
Okay. And so does this police report truly and accurately reflect what he told you?
Yes, to the best of my ability, yes.
Your Honor, under Evidence Code 1237, I would like to read a portion of this report as past recollection recorded.
Hearsay.
There's two potential.
Okay, the second level, is it consistent or inconsistent?
There are, Mr. Kaufman related some things that were inconsistent from some things in here, but also, for the most part, said he didn't recall some statements he had made to Mr. Coulter, but whatever he told him at the time was truthful.
I see. I suppose.
Also admissible, Your Honor, under Evidence Code Section 1235.
Right.
And prior inconsistent statement.
Well, no, that was what I was asking,
Yes.
whether it was inconsistent. So let me, what I'll do is I'll look at the statements. Given the objection, I'll compare the statement to the prior statement and make a ruling. So I'll give our jurors, I'll give myself 5 minutes to do that, and we'll give the jurors, let's come back at 10. 10:45. I wanted to chat with juror 6135 just for a minute. And then everyone else, do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. And I just need a minute to inquire with 6135. About the appointments, and so the one on July 7, that's no problem for us to start 45 minutes late. I'm wondering the one on Monday, July 12, is there a way, and if it's private, we can talk a different signal if it's private for some reason, but is there a way you could have that at a different time, either later in the day or earlier? Because just we lose the whole afternoon if we do it on that day.
I definitely tried, but that was the only appointment that was available.
That,
I'm happy to discuss.
okay, so that's the only appointment that was available to you. No way to get it on Friday or at the end of a.
All my previous appointments were done.
Okay, I'm going to talk to the lawyers about that. The other one, there's no problem. I'll talk to the other lawyers and make sure that's okay. So I'll get back to you on that one, but the first one's no problem at all, and the second one, it'll probably be okay, but let me just talk to them, okay? Thanks. All right, on the objection, if we can resolve that, what is the, what, are they all inconsistent statements, Mr. Lewin?
Yes, Your Honor, so the court remembers, I think the court would.
We're on the record.
To make a finding of being, that he was deliberately evasive. The court remembers Mr. Kaufman, in essence said that he didn't remember anything, then confirmed that he would only admit whatever we had on tape, and then repeatedly said, well, if I said it on tape, I'll admit it, otherwise I won't. So it's people's position that when he was answering, I don't know, he was being deliberately evasive.
What are the statements you seek to introduce?
So there are different statements. The first one is Susan Berman and Durst most often acted like they were genuinely good friends. However, at times they acted like they had a dark secret together.
They acted like they had a dark secret together.
Yes. And when he was asked about that at the conditional examination, which we played, his response was he doesn't recall, but that's something that he could have said.
Okay, so he denied. He was confronted with that statement, and he denies, and he may have feigned his lack of recollection that they looked like they had a dark secret. They acted like they had a dark secret. Okay. Okay, hold that one for a moment. Next one.
The second one was Kaufman stated that at one point Berman had told him that Bobby Durst had killed his wife. Now, he admitted that he made that statement.
Okay, and so this is admitted as, on what basis would I admit it?
It would be admitted as a prior consistent statement.
Was he cross-examined in a way that suggested that he was not credible?
Yeah, well, he was cross-examined in a way to suggest that that statement was inaccurate.
Okay, next statement, and then I'll hear from you.
Okay, the next statement is Berman related to him, to Kaufman, that Bobby's wife was a beautiful woman who was attending medical school and that she was going to leave Durst. Berman stated that Durst flipped out but didn't mean to do it. And that's the portion of the statement which he either denied or feigned ignorance of ever making that to the detectives.
So 3 statements?
Yes.
So so who will argue this for the defense?
Me.
says he doesn't remember it, act like a dark secret. Which argument?
First of all, Your Honor, I've never been confronted with making this argument in the context of a stipulated conditional. So in other words, this man's not available now at this point in time.
Right.
So we would not be able to, one, recall him to ask him about this. And in fact, I don't recall during the conditional he was actually shown this so that he could have a chance to have had his recollection refreshed.
Or to deny or, well, he was given an opportunity to deny or explain.
Okay, but
and he says he didn't recall.
And I think that that has to be accepted. And when they say that we impeached,
Well, it doesn't have to be accepted. It's up to me to determine whether he's feigning his lack of recollection.
right?
So, okay,
And I don't
next.
think in the course of my examination, I cross-examined him to suggest that he had been misleading. In fact, my examination of him was related to his memories more about her behavior and what kind of person she was. And the focus on my cross was on this alleged conversation that they had on an airplane when they were exchanging ideas. And
I think that raises questions as to his credibility. So I think that's fair game, that part. But
well, I didn't really question his credibility. What I talked about was how he was playing a game with her, and the people did not suggest that they weren't playing a game. That never was done on redirect. It was never done on direct.
not that he's lying. It's just that the jury has reason to discount it is enough. So I think that. But okay. So are these arguments as to all three, or just to the first one?
Well, the second one, I kind of think they said he didn't really say what they want to introduce the report for. The second one seemed like they eliminated that themselves.
Tell me the second one again.
He said he killed Susan Berman. I'm sorry. Susan Berman said that Bobby Durst killed Kathy Durst. And he admitted that statement. And he said he offered.
So this is prior consistent. This is prior
Correct.
consistent on that one.
So I understand this. We're going to use the police report to impeach him, and then we're going to also use the police report to make him credible?
Sure.
That's
Yes.
how the code
Yes.
works.
Yes. You could. You could do both. And so now the
How
third
do
thing.
we comment on that, or how does the court comment on that to the jury? Just
I
an
don't.
argument?
No, the jury determines what the weight to give to a consistent or inconsistent statement, or whether the feigned recollection, whether the recollection is.
But since we
feigned.
can't call him back, Your Honor, don't you think you need to consider, under an analysis of more prejudicial than probative?
I always do. Yes.
Okay, so in this instance, Your Honor, you have a witness who is a conditional witness that we don't have access to now, that after he testifies, they bring a police officer in to talk about a report, and yet we don't have a chance to question him at this point in time, again, by calling him back.
Well, you could call him back, I suppose. You could subpoena him.
And Your Honor, let me be clear, because I think it's important. On the stipulations that we reached, which counsel have never commented on,
that'll be
in
good.
each stipulation, it is said, it does not prevent the defense from calling these individuals in their own case.
I got that, Your Honor, I heard
Well,
you when you said
Okay,
it.
not fair to the reporter to both talk.
I'm sorry.
If I can just finish. The other issue is obviously, it's very clear that this witness was being deliberately evasive. So either if you want to look at his answers, either he, in the end, was inconsistent, and the way that he said it, he resisted, then he says, well, if I said it, if you have it down, then I guess that's correct. So either it's a prior inconsistent or it's a prior consistent, and most importantly, the jury needs to understand that when he was originally questioned by Detective Coulter, that is what he said, because in the end, that is extremely probative evidence.
All right, the second and the third, I don't have any problem with those. The acted like a dark secret is peculiar to me. I mean, how does one act like they have a dark secret? I don't really even know what that means. I mean, it's sort of.
Your Honor, we'll withdraw that request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
With respect to the dark secret part.
Okay. Anything else?
I was going to say something. Give me 1 second, Your Honor. I got to remember. It was in relation to the last thing Mr. Lewin said. What's it? Yeah, Your Honor, can we be clear, that's what it was, on exactly what the detective is going to tell the jury from the report? Because as you commented, we don't want the whole report, but there has to be some completeness in terms of what he's going to say.
So what I'm allowing is him to read quotations, his quotations of those second and third comments by Paul Kaufman to him.
So it
Okay.
would be,
Recess. You work, any problem, you'll work. I mean, is there a problem?
no, I just have him read from the report.
Yeah, but I want to be sure he reads, there's everything, not just the little bit that was just offered.
David, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, okay, so Doctrine of Completeness is before, I'm gonna cut off Mr. Lewin here, so that's to make the whole understandable. In other
Yeah.
words, it doesn't necessarily come in just because there's more to the document. Okay, it's to keep things from being taken out of context.
No,
No,
okay.
we'll discuss off the record. I'll
He said the
explain.
following, Your Honor, because we're still on
Yeah.
the record. Kaufman is unsure. That's what I want to have read when they read the part that stated, they want to read, Kaufman stated at one point Berman had told him that Bobby Durst has killed his wife. Then he says Kaufman is unsure. I mean,
No, he can clarify that. When he says he's unsure as to whether Susan said Bob told him that versus he got it from somewhere else. And that's what the man testified to on the conditional exam.
Okay, thank you.
well, Your Honor, to complete the record, it says Kaufman is unsure, but he thinks Berman had told him that Durst had made this admission to her. So if the whole thing should be there so the jury can weigh the credibility of it.
Okay, he can cross-examine on that. You don't have any problem with him cross-examining on that.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay, so 15 minutes. Actually, a little less right now.
There's a third thing.
to Department 1. We got a screen that is, except for one. And Mr. Miata, Mr. Lewin. Detective Coulter has resumed the witness stand. All of our jurors now are present. And Detective, I will remind you that you're under oath. Mr. Bailey, and you may resume your examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, this statement you documented from Paul Kaufman, we've identified at the break a portion of that statement. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
Can you please read into the record for the jury that portion of what Paul Kaufman told you?
Kaufman stated that at one point, Berman had told him that Durst, I'm sorry, let me go back. Kaufman stated that at one point, Berman had told him that Bobby Durst had killed his wife. Kaufman is unsure, but he thinks Berman had told him that Durst had made this admission to her. Berman related to him that Bobby's wife was a beautiful woman who was attending medical school and that she was going to leave Durst. Berman stated that Durst flipped out, but he didn't mean to do it.
Thank you. When you write, Kaufman is unsure, but he thinks Berman had told him that Durst had made this admission to her. Did Kaufman tell you he was unsure that that statement was ever made from Susan Berman to him, or is he unsure whether Susan actually said Bob told her that statement?
The latter, the second.
Okay, but he didn't hesitate that Berman said that to him, that Berman had told him that Bobby Durst killed his wife?
No.
Okay. And did he express any hesitation to you when he told you Berman related to him that Bobby's wife was a beautiful woman who was attending medical school and that she was going to leave Durst? Berman stated that Durst flipped out but didn't mean to do it. When he gave that portion of the statement to you, did he show any hesitation that that's in fact what she had told him?
No.
I'm going to fast forward to October 11th of the year 2001. On that date, did you receive information from a Detective Cody Cazalis from the Galveston Police Department?
Yes.
And that's Galveston, Texas?
Galveston, Texas, yes.
Okay, and when Detective Cazalis called you on that date, what did he tell you?
That's hearsay.
Non-hearsay purpose?
Yeah, just to explain the subsequent course of conduct.
Okay, overruled.
Detective Cazalis advised us that Robert Durst had been arrested in Galveston, Texas, and that some weapons had been recovered.
Okay. And at some point, did Bobby Durst become more of a focus of your investigation for the murder of Susan Berman?
Actually, that day, yeah.
Okay. Is that the day you really began focusing on him?
Right. Initially, we had heard the name Robert Durst, and we had done background on him, just like we had on everybody that was an associate of Susan Berman, that we wanted to interview to learn about Susan Berman.
Okay.
It wasn't until this incident that we focused on Durst.
Okay. A few days later, on October 24th, 2001, did you receive some further information from Detective Kaslis?
Yes.
What type of information did you receive?
Is there not here safe purpose for this information?
Yes, and it's also subject to a stipulation I'm about to do as well.
Very well, overruled.
What type of information did you receive?
That Durst had flown from San Francisco to Kennedy Airport in New York on the 23rd of 2000, December 23rd, 2000.
Okay, and was that on American Airlines?
Yes.
Was this the first time, as an investigator on this case, that you had received information that Robert Durst potentially may have been in California around the time of Susan Berman's murder?
Yes.
Okay, and the information you received that he potentially had flown from San Francisco to New York City on December 23rd, 2000?
That's correct, right? We didn't know where he was before that.
Okay. Your Honor, I have a 14-page document from American Airlines. May I mark this as People's 142?
People's 142, all right.
And I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 143?
Yes.
And I'm showing People's 142 on the both. The stipulation is as follows. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 142, date stamped LADA 158634 through LADA 158647, are true and correct copies of American Airlines business records, AA records, we'll call them. On pages LADA 158642 through LADA 158643, the fields on the records can be properly interpreted as follows.
Mr. Bailey, can you just say for the record what stipulation this is?
The exhibit is 143, but the stipulation is number
1.
Stipulation number 1.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
The field name indicates the passenger's name. The field flight indicates the flight number. The field date indicates the date of the flight. The field board PT indicates the airport code where the flight was boarded. The field DEST indicates the airport code of the flight's destination. The field ticketing indicates information about where and when the ticket was purchased. Quote, DURST R period SF 0443J space 2116/23DEC, end quotes, indicates that the ticket was purchased by an individual named R. Durst at the ticket counter of the San Francisco Airport, SFO, on December 23rd at 21:16 hours or 9:16 p.m. The field phone indicates the telephone number provided by the customer. Line AA 0018P 23DEC J SFO JFK HK 01 1000P 628A 24 DEC S indicates that Flight 0018 was scheduled to depart SFO on December 23rd at 10 p.m. and arrive at JFK at 6:28 a.m. on December 24th. So stipulated? Stipulated.
Court accepts your stipulation. Thank you.
Okay. So you received this information. Did you have subsequent contact with American Airlines yourself?
Yes,
Okay. And did you learn that, in fact, passenger named R. Durst had purchased a ticket the same day of the flight on December 23rd from San Francisco, flying to JFK?
yes,
Did you, on November 14th, 2001, serve another search warrant for Mr. Durst's AT&T wireless cell phone records, phone number 415-999-7612?
yes,
Did you, in that search warrant, request from AT&T Wireless all calls made from that cell phone from November 1st, 2000 through December 31st of the year 2000?
yes, I did.
And did you receive those records on or about November 19th, 2001?
Yes,
And did you book them into evidence as item 77?
yes,
You and I have a 31-page document. It is records sent in response to a subpoena from AT&T Wireless. May I mark this as People's 144?
Yes, 144.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as People's 144. Are those the records you received from Mr. Durst's cell phone with the number I indicated?
yes,
And when you had received those records, did you assume review them?
yes.
Did you learn something that to you seemed out of the ordinary?
Well, phone calls made on that wireless, there were several every day up until November 4th, and then it stopped completely.
Was it November 4th or November 14th?
I'm sorry, November 14th, my mistake.
Okay. So in reviewing these records, was there calls regularly made on just about every day from that cell phone?
Yeah, several a day, yes.
From November 1st, the date you requested the records, through November 14th?
Correct, yes.
And then from November 15th through the end of the time period requested, the end of December, were there any calls made from this cell phone?
No,
Did it appear that this cell phone was no longer used after November 14th?
that's correct, yes.
I'm going to fast forward now to November 30th of 2001. Did you receive information that Robert Durst, after he had posted bond in Galveston, Texas, had been arrested for shoplifting in Pennsylvania after he being released on bond?
Yes, I received a call from Joe Becerra, New York State Police.
Okay, and you got that call on November 30th, 2001?
Yes,
Did you on April 30th, 2002, after Mr. Durst, sometime after Durst had been arrested in Pennsylvania, did you travel to Galveston, Texas?
yes,
And did you travel there on April 30th, 2002?
yes,
Prior to traveling there, had you obtained a court order ordering Mr. Durst to provide handwriting samples?
yes, I did with the courts in Galveston.
And who did you, when you went to Galveston, Texas, did you bring with you a forensic document examiner from LAPD SID's division?
Yes, it was Karen Chirodit, Chiarodit, I believe it is,
Okay.
who was a supervisor for the handwriting unit.
And I asked you if you traveled on October 30th, 2002. Actually, is that the date that you actually met with Mr. Durst to obtain these handwriting samples?
Right, right, that's the day we did the handwriting.
Okay. Who else from your memory was present other than yourself and the LAPD forensic document examiner and Mr. Durst?
Well, good old Mr. DeGuerin was standing there, and,
I'm sitting, but I'll stand.
well, you were standing in the room during the handwriting.
I sat for a while, I thought.
Oh, okay. And then Chip Lewis was sitting there, and I believe they had a handwriting expert of their own that sat in, but I don't recall her.
Okay. And while you were there, did Mr. Durst provide handwriting samples?
Yes, on the instructions of Casey, or Miss Chirodit.
You call her Casey?
Casey, that's what we call her. I can't say that last name.
So did Casey present Mr. Durst with some forms?
That's correct, yes.
Did she tell him, write this, write this, write this?
Yes, she did.
Your Honor, before I do that, did you take these handwriting samples when they were done?
Yes,
And you brought them back to Los Angeles?
correct.
As part of your investigation, did you collect other known samples of Mr. Durst's handwriting, just from, say, the DMV, from letters he may have written, etc.?
Yes, we did.
Okay. I have another stipulation. May I do this now, Your Honor?
Yes.
I have a document. It's a 10-page document, and it has K1 marked on the bottom. May I mark this as People's 145?
Yes.
I have another document, and I have the page numbers written, sorry. Page document, and it has the labels K2 through K25 on the actual documents. May I mark this stack of papers People's 146?
Yes.
All right, so I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 147?
Yes.
Okay. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibits 145 and 146, and as referenced as K1, that's People's 145, and K2 through K25, that's People's 146, each contain the known handwriting and or handprinting of defendant Robert Durst. People's Exhibit 145, aka K1, was written by defendant Robert Durst at the request of law enforcement and pursuant to a court order. People's Exhibit 146, aka K2 through K25, contains various writings that were collected during the investigation. So stipulated?
Stipulated.
Okay.
Court
And
accepts the stipulation.
thank you. And K1 through K25, are those reference indications that you provided, or was those provided by forensic document examiners at some subsequent time?
I don't know, I haven't seen what you're holding in your hands there, so I can't say unless you show me.
Sure. May I approach?
Yes.
Okay, this is what now?
That's one. I'm showing you 145.
Okay, P145, K1, these are the handwriting exemplars that were obtained in Galveston, Texas. KC, or handwriting experts.
Those are the ones you saw Mr. Durst write.
Yes.
And People's 146, or if you just flip through those documents, are those some documents you obtained during the course of your investigation? When you were gathering handwriting examples from Mr. Durst?
Yes.
Things he wrote.
Yes, they are various handwriting samples.
When you saw Mr. Durst writing People's 145, providing these samples, did you notice anything unusual about the way he was writing these?
Well, when he was instructed to write in cursive, everything was fine. He would write it. When it came time to do printing, it seemed like he was slow and deliberate and would almost write the letters in reverse, like going, instead of clockwise, writing them in counterclockwise, almost like he had been rehearsed or practicing.
Non-responsive stricken, the part about rehearsing.
Well, did you see him write any letters backwards?
Yes, that's what I say, counterclockwise.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's 145, the page that's date stamp 37805. Do you see the second line I'm pointing to here?
Yes,
You see how that S is written backwards?
yes.
Is that one of the letters you saw him writing backwards?
Right, Casey had him write the address in Beverly Hills several times.
Okay. And you see how the L's in this, see how the L's look in this Beverly Hills he wrote?
Yes,
And then you see how the L's look down here in this Beverly Hills he wrote?
Right.
Actually, my pen is not.
yes.
Did it appear to you that he was making a conscious effort based on what you saw to alter the way he would write certain letters?
That's
That
leading,
was my
suggestive.
opinion.
Hold on. That's leading, suggestive, and it's also beyond his expertise.
Overruled.
What was your answer?
That was my opinion, yes.
By the way, did you notice any change in how deliberate he was when he was writing Beverly Hills versus other parts that he was writing?
I don't understand what you mean by change.
Well, when did he start becoming most deliberative? What types of letters was it when he started pausing and what you described as thinking about what he was writing?
Oh, when he had to do anything that was like a block letter or printed letter, his cursive he was fine, and writing appeared normal. It was block letters or printing, which obviously the Beverly Hills was part of that.
Okay. So let's go back to your investigation. On July 11th, 2002, did you obtain records from Bank of America or Robert Durst Visa card?
Yes.
And what was your purpose of obtaining those records?
Well, one, we were trying to see what kind of charges that he had on his phone during that time. 'Cause
On his credit card, you mean?
on his credit card, yes.
Okay. And I have a stack of records. They are 21 pages. May I mark these as People's 148?
Yes.
And I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 149?
Yes.
Stipulation is as follows. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 148, date stamped LADA 001421 through LADA 001441, are true and correct copies of documents that Los Angeles Police Department detectives received from Bank of America on July 11, 2002, called the Bank of America record. The Bank of America records are authentic business records of Bank of America. LADA 001423 through LADA 001424 contain the customer profile information for the holder of this account. Pages LADA 001426 through LADA 001441 contain information regarding specific transactions on the account. The field labeled card contains the card number of the Visa debit or credit card used for each transaction. So stipulated?
Stipulated.
Or accept the stipulation. What number is the stipulation?
4.
Thank you. Stipulation number 4 is People's 149.
Yes.
Thank you.
So you obtained these Bank of America records for Mr. Durst's Visa.
Yes,
You saw the card number associated with that account.
yes.
And did any charges on that account pique your interest?
There were some charges made, it's called airphone. I think when you're on a plane and you want to make a call from the plane, you got to use your credit card. So
Now-
there were some charges on airphone.
Okay. Now, from the Bank of America records, could you tell what plane the calls were made from, or even like what day the calls were made, or can you just see that airphone charges were billed to this credit card?
I don't recall how I exactly came up, but they were on a United Airlines flight. I had to call United Airlines.
Okay, that's what I'm asking you.
Right,
You saw charges for airphone, is that right?
right.
Okay. Did you, prior to getting this Bank of America documents, did you know, write that, you knew by this point that Mr. Durst had purportedly flown from San Francisco back to New York on December 23rd, right?
That's correct, yes.
Did you know or have any information at this point as to when he flew to California?
No,
All right. So after you got these Bank of America statements showing that Mr. Durst had made charges from an airphone, did you, on July 22nd, 2002, request records from airphone?
yes, I did.
And is the business called Verizon Airphone Incorporated?
Yes,
And did you receive those records from Airphone on October 30th, 2002?
right, that's how I found out, yeah. Correct, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I have a 2-page document from Verizon Airphone Inc. May I mark this as People's 150?
Yeah.
And then I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 151?
Yeah.
This is stipulation 3, Your Honor. This document marked for identification as People's Exhibit 150, base stamp LADA 42469 through LADA 42470, are true and correct copies of documents that Los Angeles Police Department detectives received from Verizon Airphone Inc. on October 30th, 2002. Airphone records, we'll call them. The Airphone records are authentic business records of Verizon Airphone Inc. On page LADA 42470, the columns can be properly interpreted as follows. Can you see this in front of you?
I can now, yes.
Okay. The column ACIS call ID stands for Airphone Customer Information System and is a sequential internal number assigned to each record. The column call date time indicates the date and time of each call. The column CA indicates the type of credit card used to make the call. VI indicates that a Visa card was used. Column card ID bill indicates the credit card number of the bank card that was used to make the call. Column dialed number indicates the telephone number that was dialed. Column min bill indicates the number of minutes of the call. Column ARIN code indicates the airline the call was made from. UA stands for United Airlines. Column tail number. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Column tail NUM indicates the tail number of the airplane that the call was made from. So, when you receive these records, so stipulated?
Stipulated.
When you receive these records, did you learn that a Visa with the card number indicated on People's 150 here, ending in 28479, was used to make several airphone calls on December 19th of the year 2000?
Yes,
And was that the same Visa number associated with the credit card Visa for Mr. Durst reflected in People's 148?
yes, it was.
Okay. So these ended up being the charges from the airphone that showed up on his Visa bill.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you learned from these records that several calls were made on December 19th, 2000 from a United Airlines flight, right?
Correct, yes.
And you had the tail number of the plane, N617UA. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Did you make efforts now to determine what flight was this on October 19th of the year 2000?
Yes, I called United Airlines, and they gave me the flight number. I believe it was United Airlines flight number 5.
And was that a flight from JFK to San Francisco
Yes, it was.
on December 19th of the year 2000?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have 5 pages of records from United Airlines. May I mark these as People's 152?
Yes.
And I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 153?
Yes.
Stipulation is stipulation 14, Your Honor. Thank you. The document marked for identification as People's Exhibit 152 is a true and correct copy of business records maintained by United Airlines, UAL. The UAL records demonstrate that on December 19th of the year 2000, United Airlines Flight 5 departed John F. Kennedy International Airport, JFK, in New York at 11:19 a.m. and arrived at San Francisco International Airport, SFO, at 2:46 p.m. The aircraft for this flight had tail number N617UA. So stipulated?
Stipulated.
All right. So at this juncture in your investigation, you have Mr. Durst flying to New York on December 23rd. Do you now believe, based on the investigation you've conducted up to this point, that he flew to California, San Francisco in particular, on December 19th?
That's correct, yes.
Did you do some investigation regarding where Mr. Durst, what vehicle he owned that he may have had in the West Coast?
He had a SUV. I can't remember if it was a Ford Explorer.
Does a
It
90,
was an SUV.
does a 1996 Ford Explorer
Oh, there you go.
sound familiar?
That sounds familiar, yes.
All right. And at some point, did you do some investigation with respect to Harper Ford, located up in Northern California?
Yes, in the city of Arcata, which is just north of Eureka, California.
Okay. Your Honor, I have a set of documents from Harper Motors in Eureka, California. 5 pages. May I mark this as People's 154?
Yes.
I have a 2-page document. I'm sorry, a 3-page document. It's a CLETS, C-L-E-T-S printout. May I mark this as People's 155?
Yes.
And I have a copy of a certificate of title for a 1996 Ford Explorer. May I mark this as People's 156?
Yes.
And I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 157?
And what is the number of the stipulation?
Stipulation 6, Your Honor.
Stipulation 6 is People's 157. Thanks.
Thank you. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 154, date stamped LADA 002973 through LADA 002977, are true and correct copies of business records that the Los Angeles Police Department detectives received from Harper Motors, the Harper Motors record. The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 155, date stamped LADA 038888 to LADA 038890, are true and correct copies of official records maintained in the California Law Enforcement Telecommunications System, CLETS records. The document marked for identification as People's Exhibit 156, date stamped LADA 038891, is a true and correct copy of an official record maintained by the California Department of Motor Vehicles. So stipulated?
Stipulated.
Detective, during your investigation, did you learn that Mr. Durst had a 1996 Ford Explorer that he kept up in the Eureka area?
Yes.
Did you obtain a search warrant in this case for Robert Durst's Pac Bell, Pacific Bell telephone number up in Eureka, number 707-445-3200?
Yes, that was one of his numbers, yes.
And you received those records?
Yes.
And did you request all calls that were made from November 1st, 2000 through December 31st, 2000?
Just like the other ones, yes.
All right. I'm going to pause on that for a second.
Okey-doke.
I have a stipulation, Your Honor. I have a 1-page document. It's a check in the account of Robert Durst made out to cash for $9,500. It's the front and back of the check. May I mark this as People's 158?
Yes.
I have a stipulation. May I mark it as People's 159?
Yes.
The document marked for identification as People's Exhibit 158, date stamped LADA 126908, is a true and correct copy, front and back, of a check written and cashed by defendant Robert Durst. Defendant presented this check at 12:47 p.m. on December 20th, 2000, at the Eureka branch of Bank of America, located at 334 F Street in Eureka, California. Defendant received $9,500 cash and did not deposit any portion of this check into his account. So stipulated?
Stipulation 13.
Thank you. Ye- Pardon me?
So,
The stipulation 13 is stipulation number 159. These PAC Bell records, you've not marked those?
I have not marked them yet.
Okay.
So, to these PAC Bell records that you received, I have a stack of Pacific Bell records. They're 50 pages. May I mark these as People's 160, Your Honor?
Yes.
I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 161?
Yes. And stipulation number?
7.
Thank you.
The documents marked for identification as People's Exhibit 160, date stamped LADA 042384 through LADA 042433, are true and correct copies of business records that Los Angeles Police Department detectives received from Pacific Bell records. The records at page LADA 042422 to 042423 can be properly interpreted as follows. These pages reflect calls made using pages reflect calls made using a calling card issued under telephone number 707-677-3200. Under the heading Pacific Bell Calling Cards, the column labeled Date reflects the date the call was made. DE20 means December 20th, 2000. The column labeled Time reflects the time the call was placed. The column labeled Place reflects the location of the number called, as well as the location where the call was placed from. The column labeled Type indicates the type of call made. The word Card indicates that a calling card was used. And the column labeled Minutes indicates the duration of the call. So you received and you reviewed these records?
Yes.
And did you learn that a calling card associated with Mr. Durst's telephone number was used to make calls from Garbersville, California on December 20th?
Yes.
And was there a call made from Garbersville at 2:23 p.m.?
Yes.
Was there another one made at 2:28 p.m.?
Yes.
And was there another one made at 2:33 p.m.?
Correct. Yes.
Now, where is Garbersville in relation to Eureka, California?
Well, I'd never heard of Garbersville, so I had to look it up back then. And it's about 70 miles south of Eureka on the Highway 1 heading south towards
The 101?
The 101, the 1. It's Ben's boy here. I don't know the Northern California stuff, but
It's Garberville, actually.
Garber, I'm sorry.
Garber, yeah. Garberville. So it's on the, would you say the 101, the 1? I don't know. It's all the same to me.
But the
But
court take judicial notice that Garberville is off of Highway 101.
Yeah, I think it's 101. But I haven't been up there for a while, so let me look. I'll take judicial notice after I confirm that. Okay. Yeah, it's 101.
Thank you. I have a map. I marked this as People's 160. Is that a 9 or 7? 162. Should have had a map with highways on it. Okay. does this map fairly and accurately depict where Garbersville is located in relation to Eureka, California?
Yeah, it's about 70 miles south of Eureka.
So it's about 70 miles south of Eureka. I want you to assume that someone starts their driving trip in Eureka, California at sometime at approximately 12:47 p.m. Shortly after that cash was checked. That check was cashed in Eureka, California. Okay? And then they're driving towards Los Angeles. Would it be consistent that they are in Garbersville at approximately 2:30 p.m. when those calls were made?
Sure, it's possible, yeah.
Okay.
70-mile drive.
And if you were going to start your trip in Eureka, California on December 20th of the year 2000, at sometime after 12:47 p.m., after you cashed the check, and you were going to drive to Los Angeles, would Garbersville be on the main route of travel?
As I recall, it was like the only route of travel from Eureka down to San Francisco.
On October 21st of the year 2002,
I'm sorry, what date?
strike that. We'll take you fast forward to 2005. June 29th of 2005. Did you meet with Sergeant Gary Jones from the Galveston Police Department?
Yes.
And was this after Mr. Durst's trial in Galveston had concluded?
Yes, it was.
And did Sergeant Gary Jones bring you evidence that he had in his possession in Galveston to you? Or did you meet him somewhere?
Well, I had to get a court order in Galveston, Texas, to have evidence released to me from the Galveston case. Sergeant Jones gave me that evidence from their property room.
Okay. Did he come out here or did you go to Galveston?
No, I went to Galveston.
All right. And did he give you a .22 caliber Ruger pistol?
Yes, he did.
And did you book it in evidence?
Yes, I did.
You want to have an evidence envelope. May I mark the envelope and its contents as People's 163?
Yeah.
There's several firearms, Your Honor. We've cleared them all with the bailiff ahead of time. They've been appropriately checked for safety, as well as a tie has been put through the barrel.
Thank you.
May I approach?
Yes.
People's 163. Do you recognize the writing on that?
Yes, I do. This is a Los Angeles Police Department handgun envelope. Has all my writing on it in black, and the evidence numbers. And in red at the top it says Berman, so it's a Berman case.
Okay. And is this a .22 caliber Ruger semi-automatic handgun that you received from Sergeant Gary Jones?
Yes.
And did you book it into evidence in LAPD under DR number 00-082-5485 as item 4095?
Yes, I did.
I'm removing the contents. Is this the .22 caliber Ruger handgun that you received from Sergeant Gary Jones at the conclusion of the defendant's trial in Galveston?
Yes.
Did Sergeant Jones...
You can project it too.
Sure. Did Sergeant...
At the court report.
Oh, okay. It's not loaded.
Doesn't matter.
Now you're pointing it at John.
Never point a gun.
Never point a
Never
gun.
point a gun.
Don't let Dick get it.
Did you receive from Sergeant Gary Jones a 9mm handgun, a Browning semi-automatic?
Yes, I did.
May I mark this evidence envelope and its contents as People's 164?
So I'd recommend that after displaying it, that you then return it to its envelope,
Yes. Thank you.
not leaving it unattended.
Thank you. Showing you what is marked People's 164. You recognize the writing on that envelope?
Yes, again, it's labeled the same way, my writing in black. Berman is written up on the top in red. Evidence item 94 is in red.
And is this 9mm Browning semi-automatic handgun you received from Gary Jones at the conclusion of Mr. Durst's trial?
Yes.
I'm removing the contents.
Yes, that's it.
That's it?
That's it.
That is the 9mm?
Yes, yes.
And this is a semi-automatic handgun?
Yes, it is.
I'm placing it back in the envelope. Did you recover any more handguns from Sergeant Gary Jones at the conclusion of the defendant's trial in Galveston?
There were 2 revolvers that had been recovered in Pennsylvania at the time of his arrest.
Okay. Was one of them a .38 Special Airlight Smith & Wesson?
Yes.
May I mark this as People's 165? 165?
Yes.
And is this your writing on this envelope?
Again, it's the same as the others, same envelope, same writing. Evidence item 96.
Okay. And is this one of the .38 caliber handguns you recovered from Sergeant Gary Jones at the conclusion of Mr. Durst's trial?
Yes.
Removing the contents. Is this the .38 special that you recovered from Sergeant Jones?
Yes.
Displaying for the jury. Placing it back in the envelope. And finally, I have another evidence envelope and mark this as People's 166.
Yes.
And finally, did you recover from Sergeant Gary Jones after Mr. Durst's trial was over a Taurus brand .38 special revolver?
Yes, it's the same. The envelope is the same, only evidence item 97. And it'll have the serial number of the gun written on the envelope, just like the others.
Okay, and you're referring to People's 166?
You say so. It's evidence item, did I say
Is that
97?
People's 166?
Yeah, I look at it as evidence item, so,
I removed the content, and is that the gun?
yes.
That's the firearm that Sergeant Jones gave you
Yes, it is.
from the Pennsylvania arrest?
Yes.
Placing it back in the envelope. Did you also receive from Sergeant Gary Jones a 9mm magazine?
Yes, it went to the Browning, yes.
Okay. And did you book that as item 98?
Yes.
Did you receive from Sergeant Gary Jones another 9mm magazine?
Yes, I did.
And did you book that as item 99?
I did, yes.
Did you recover from Sergeant Gary Jones two separate magazines for the .22 caliber pistol?
Yes, I did.
And did you book one of them in as item 121 and the second one in as item 126?
Yes.
Did you receive a Meade 5-star spiral notebook from Sergeant Gary Jones?
Yes, I did.
And did you book that into evidence as item 102?
I'd have to look at the tag, but sounds right.
I have an evidence envelope. May I mark this envelope and its contents as People's 167?
Yeah,
May I approach?
yes.
I can't recall all these evidence item numbers by
I
heart.
don't blame you,
It's
trust me.
just,
That's why I write it on the envelope.
Yeah, evidence item 102, yes.
Oh, the magazine's not marked as,
I did mark them.
He just referred to them without marking them.
Okay. And I'm removing the contents of People's 167. Is this the Meade 5-star notebook that you received from Sergeant Gary Jones?
Yes, I believe it still has their evidence tag up in the right-hand corner.
Okay. And just to make sure, this is the Meade 5-star.
Correct, yes, yes.
Okay. And this writing was in there?
Yes, yes it was.
This note from the Hilton Gardens Inn, it says Center for Women and Families in Fairfield, on Fairfield Avenue.
Yes,
That was in there?
yes it was.
Okay.
Yes, how it was.
And were there some other paperwork inside of here, which is also in this evidence envelope?
Correct, yes.
Okay, I'm going to place the envelope back in here. Did you, that note had the address on Fairfield, in Fairfield County, Connecticut. Did you receive from Sergeant Gary Jones an atlas for Fairfield County, Connecticut?
An atlas? You gotta refresh my recollection. There was a lot of paperwork. I can't.
I have an evidence envelope. May I mark this as People's 168, I think?
Yeah.
You recognize the writing on the envelope?
Yes, that was my partner at that time, Wally Tonelli. He went with me.
You remove the contents.
So, move the content. Say, it's a Galveston envelope.
You remove the contents of that.
Oh, Fairfield County Atlas, yes. Okay, I remember this now.
Okay. So, did you receive this atlas for Fairfield County, Connecticut from Sergeant Gary Jones after Mr. Durst's Galveston trial was completed?
Yes.
I'm going to place this atlas back inside both envelopes. Place it in the inner envelope. Place the inner envelope into the exterior envelope. And you put these all into evidence, all these items you described under the same LAPD DR number?
Yes, that DR number is, the first two numbers of the year, second are the division 08, and then the last numbers are usually the file number,
Okay.
case number.
So, are you familiar with who Mark Smerling and Andrew Jarecki are?
Yes, I am.
And have you met them?
Mark Smerling more so. I met directly once or twice.
Okay. And at some point in 2010 approximately, did Mr. Smerling make contact with you?
Yes, he did.
And did he inform you they were working on a project involving the Susan Berman case?
Documentary, yes.
And at some point, did you meet with him and have discussions with him?
Well, I got calls a lot of times from reporters and people wanting stories. I would always refer them to press relations. But in his case, he said he had some...
I object to hearsay.
All right, at this point, you've the question has been answered, so why don't we go to the next question?
Yeah. Did Mr. Smerling offer to show you something?
I had some videotaped interviews of Mr. Durst that he had.
Okay. And did you go watch them?
Yes, I did.
And did it pique your interest?
Of course, because he was talking. He never talked to us.
When, at some point, did you provide some information to Mr. Smerling?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you provide either a photo or a copy of the what's been called the cadaver note and envelope?
I don't specifically recall it, but I probably did at that time. It was known that it was out there.
Did you provide him some crime scene photographs from this case?
I provided him some photos of the residents. I don't provide photos of the bodies out of respect.
Now, let me ask you something. At any point were you working for Mr. Smerling and Mr. Drake?
No, I was getting ready to retire.
At any point, did you give them any directions on what they should or shouldn't do?
No, I just thought it was going to be a 1-hour documentary.
Did you at any point direct them on who to talk to or who not to talk to?
No,
Okay. Did you just provide them this information?
right?
Why'd you do that? Why'd you let them look at some of these photos from the Susan Berman case? Why'd you let them look at the cadaver note and envelope pictures or whatever you did?
As I said earlier, I used to get calls all the time, especially from reporters in New York, and I never really talked to them. I'm not the most photogenic guy, and so.
It's hard to tell with your mask on.
Yeah, I know. But so when he had videotapes of Robert Durst, and I knew I was getting ready to retire, I figured I would work with him, hoping to get new information on the case, or to keep the case alive. Because I knew once I retired, it would probably go on a shelf, and nobody would look at it again, like a lot of cases do in LAPD. So that was my main reason for meeting with him. And like I say, I didn't know it was going to be a 6-part whatever, but that's what it turned out to be.
Okay.
But
Well, let me ask you, do you regret meeting with them?
no, not at all. We're here in court today, aren't we? Kept it alive.
Okay. And you said you decided to work with them. Were you guys working together, or were they working independently of you?
No, they're working independently, but they would call me from time to time with a question, or I would meet with Mark at the Robbery Homicide Division if he had questions.
Okay. Did they ever provide you any money or payment for anything you did?
No, I think I got a sandwich, maybe a breakfast or something when I met with Mark, but that was about it.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
DeGuerin, you may cross-examine.
I have more than 10 minutes.
Of course you do.
You do?
Yeah, I'm sorry to say that, but
All right.
Well, let's get started. We'll get the first 10 out of the way.
well, good morning, Mr. Coulter, or Detective Coulter,
Good morning.
former Detective Coulter.
Former.
We've met
Yes, we have.
in almost, 19 years now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it has.
I noticed you called me old DeGuerin there.
We're all getting older now.
Yeah, we're about the same age, aren't we?
I don't know. How old are you?
I'm 80. How old are you?
No, I'm just 67.
Oh, really?
I'm a pup. I wasn't wrong.
Well, it was probably when we met, the circumstances were rather tense, but at least we were cordial.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I didn't consider him tense at all. Sorry you did.
And so the jury can understand that. That was before the trial of Mr. Durst in Galveston, right?
That's correct, I believe so, yeah.
And the trial in which he was found by a jury not guilty of the murder of Morris Black. Correct?
Yes, yes.
Right.
I was waiting for your question.
Thank you for waiting. Let's go, if you will, for a moment to when the case was transferred to you at what I think they call shorthand RHD, or robbery homicide,
Right, Robbery Homicide Division, RHD, yes.
from the West Hollywood Police Department of Detective.
West Los Angeles Division, West Hollywood is the Sheriff's Department,
Okay, West Los Angeles.
West Los Angeles Division.
And I believe you said there were a couple of reasons for that transfer. One of them, it was going to be a high-profile case because Ms. Berman was known to be the daughter of a mafia guy in Vegas, right?
I believe so, yes.
The mafia guy being Davy Berman, whose nickname was Davy the Jew.
Yes, I think so.
And he was the right-hand man until Bugsy Siegel was killed. And he was the right-hand man of Bugsy Siegel, right?
That's what I've heard. It was before my time.
Okay. Well, you knew, of course, that Bugsy Siegel died rather suddenly while being shot,
Yes.
right? Here in Los Angeles.
That's irrelevant, Your Honor.
Well, it's sudden when you get shot, usually.
Court take judicial notice,
Is
Your
it,
Honor, that the innocent
is the objection that died while being shot, or died suddenly by being shot? Is that the objection? I'm not.
It's irrelevant, it's 352. Court's prior third-party culpability rules.
It's overruled anyway. So anyway, that's all true, isn't it? You knew that the legend of the case of, excuse me, the legend of the case of the death of Bugsy Siegel and Davy the Jew taking over in Vegas, and then Susan Berman writing kind of a tell-all book about her upbringing as a mafia princess.
The book Easy Street I learned about when we were there at the house on the 11th.
Okay. By the way, Easy Street, do you know the origin of that name?
No, I've never even read the book.
Well, not the book, but in poker terms, you know what Easy Street means?
No, I'm not a gambler.
Well, you don't have to be a gambler to play cards. Have you ever played Texas Hold'em?
No.
Your Honor, it's interesting.
It's what-
It seems to be 352.
I don't think it's prejudicial. It's kind of entertaining, I guess.
Sorry, I'm boring you.
Texas Hold'em is where you line up cards on a table in four directions, and Easy Street is when you have a card that'll fit in there and you can win a hand. That's not something you knew?
No, thanks for the lesson.
Okay. So the case gets transferred to you a week or more after Susan Berman was found dead, right?
I would say it's about 2 weeks, yeah, from the 23rd to the 11th of January, yes.
Yeah. And for the reasons that you stated. Of course, you're not responsible for what happened before you got in the case. I understand that, right?
No, I had to work with what I had.
You were dealt, you had to play the hand you were dealt, to put it in poker terms.
Well, we're back to poker, huh? Yes, I guess so.
Okay. And had you been involved from the outset, it would have been a different crime scene, wouldn't it?
Possibly.
You learned that between the time Susan Berman was killed and when you took over, that several people had been on the crime scene even while it was still considered a crime scene.
I'm not sure what you're talking about while it was still a crime scene.
Well, within a day or so of Susan's body being removed and the initial detectives came in there, you knew that two people, Niall Brenner and Susie Harmon, separately, independently, had got into the house on their own, right?
That was later on, not during the initial crime scene. Once it was released by Detective Roberts and Hayes to, I believe it was Sarah, I think it was. Then I learned that they had gone into the house afterwards, yes.
And you learned that they basically had broken in, didn't you?
I learned that Niall Brenner had, yes, through I think it was a kitchen window.
And did you learn that Susie Harmon also came through the kitchen window?
I don't recall that. If you have something to refresh my recollection, I'll look at it.
Well, I think it's uncontested that she said that she came in through the kitchen window.
Okay.
It was,
I don't recall it as I
Okay.
sit here today.
well, if she said, assuming she said, that she knew the houses in the Beverly Hills area and that she knew how to get in them and she got in the kitchen window and it was easy.
Well,
That wouldn't surprise you?
You're saying houses plural in Beverly Hills?
I think that's kind of what her
I
testimony
don't
was.
know. I would find that as a surprise, but maybe it was Susan's house, yes.
Okay,
I
well,
don't know.
with Susan's house, and it's uncontested that she got in and went through stuff there, and so did Niall Brenner.
I think Niall said he was looking for a script or something she'd been working on.
Of course, you weren't there, and the police weren't there, and nobody knows what Niall Brenner looked at, do we?
No.
With that, it is now 12 o'clock and time for our recess until 1:30 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. Detective, of course, don't discuss your testimony with any other witness.
All right, thank you.